So while privacy is critical, as a doctor, we have privacy rules that are bananas. You can't talk to anyone about anything. And so I am the first one to recognize how important privacy is. As important as it is, privacy actually separates us by definition. It makes us know each other less by definition. And if I insist on having private thoughts, private motivations, private ambitions, it means that there's something sneaky, even embarrassing or shameful about those ambitions, those intentions, and those thoughts that I'm keeping private. Thinking about medicine and patients, the reason that medical information is so sacred when it comes to privacy, and of all medical information, psychiatric and psychological information is the most, and of course addictions and drugs and those kinds of things are also part of the psychological profile of a person. The reason those things are so important to keep private is because they actually expose our weaknesses. That's actually really what it is. Our weaknesses are exposed by our medical history, and we are also sensitive to each other's needs for privacy, protection, safety, security, that we really hold tight to the principle and the virtue, rightly so, of privacy. All that being said, we also find a trend of people becoming transparent, people becoming more vulnerable and more open about what they're going through in life, about the challenges they're going through in life. And so it ends up being a kind of liberation. And there's actually healing that takes place when people disclose what's going on with them or what they've heretofore been hiding, struggles they're going through, and everything like that. So, confession hour for me is that, as you know, I've been working on things, trying to figure out what my curriculum is, what my message is, because for years, for 22 years, I've been really enamored with one specific issue, which is the relationship of our external environment to our internal environment, which direction the arrow is pointing, and how tightly coupled are the two worlds. When my world gets better, does my mind get better? When my mind gets better, does the world get better? When the world gets worse, does my mind get worse? Is it vulnerable to those conditions? And when my mind gets worse, does the world get worse? And so is it vulnerable to those conditions? That's been my interest for 22 years, really, since I discovered meditation and since I discovered my mind at that time. That's what I discovered. I was introduced to my mind through a meditation book and a practice. So at this point, I've been interested in exploring with you what kinds of um, relationships there are between the world and my mind and my mind and the world, and therefore what my responsibilities are, actually. In the light of those relationships and the light of those influences, what are my opportunities? What are my obligations? What do I have? And what can I do with it? I have my whole life and I have my mind. What can I do with it? I've already done some things with it, but to be defined by those things is to be defined by the past. And most of us, as much as we talk about being present and being free, we are trapped by our past. Ironically, both a very good past and a very bad past can both trap us, both of which are bad. So when I think of the things that I've done with my life and my mind, and I think, well, that's it, then the best is past. But if I know that the best is yet to come, and I'm only going to do more with what I was given, if I know I'm going to continue to do more with all that I have, then the past is not behind. The past is ahead of us. So for me, there are always thoughts about inadequacy or, how can you put it, contamination of purpose. Oh, maybe he's just doing this for this. Maybe he's just doing this for that. Those thoughts also happen in my own mind, and they prevent me from being as present for you, as productive, as organized, and as valuable as I can be. But the point of this video is actually to do away with some of those by exposing them. So I have like 20,000, 25,000 emails in my inbox. I'm just like, I'm not a hoarder, but I click yes, send me the stuff, and then I don't go back and prune through my emails. As a result, I miss emails. And this is very it's dangerous, actually. It's a dangerous thing. The level of noise in my life goes up, and the level of signal gets drowned out by this kind of default behavior that I've just gone 38 years, or from whenever I got email, 20 years, um, without really addressing. It's an element of my mind, and actually, you can see all these. This is like one of the two or three piles of totally disorganized paperwork. I know that it doesn't look terrible, but it's not great. Believe me, like it's stressful when someone asks me for paperwork. When someone asks me for a document or something, it's very stressful because of that pile and because of the email situation. So if you think of my digital files, my emails, and my paper files, it's a lot of noise in my life. It's a lot of stress. But the reason I'm telling you this is that it's a weakness of mine. It's a weakness of mine that actually distracts me, makes me less powerful, and makes I think part of the story I'm telling myself is that it prevents me from making content. It prevents me from having a calendar. It prevents me from having a Facebook group and all the things that would really help us to have one conversation that we're that we're that we're all bought in on, a conversation that we think will help our lives, a way of our minds meeting, that consistently uplifts and empowers and informs us, because we really can, as human beings, as human minds, be each other's greatest assets or greatest threats. But the issue is that we're so distracted. Life has so many things that it's pulling us to do that the mission of becoming as helpful to each other as possible actually gets drowned out. And that's really what I'm trying to focus on, because I've become useful enough as a doctor to now make a living, not have to worry about financial incentive, and not have to worry about being labeled as a charlatan or someone who's trying to um, brainwash or cheat people out of anything. I'm not trying to cheat anyone out of anything. All I want to do is turn all of us towards each other rather than against each other. Because so many of us are, frankly, turned against each other, even in the most idyllic circumstances, even the best material conditions. There are families or groups of people or friends who turn against each other by frankly an inability to communicate. Actually, it's the inability to communicate, inability to see, to have the same values, right? To have shared values. That's what prevents us from being able to be as helpful to each other as we possibly can. As a doctor, my value and the patient's value are the same. It's the patient's health. But then how about just as from one human being to another human being? That is a more broad sort of environment that we're sharing or stage that we're playing on. And that one, to find the common value that we have as members of Gossip and Growth, or people who want to be coaches, people who want to improve their own mindset and other people's mindsets, people who want to empower themselves and other people. That's a broader community than just doctors and patients. And so I'm going to start it. I'm going to start the Facebook group. I'll invite you to join, and I'm going to start a weekly. I'll do at least one video a week of whatever content format you prefer, whether it's my face speaking or me with a whiteboard. I'll try a few different things out, or the mind map, and I'll just see what people resonate with most. It's 10 minutes and 40 seconds in. If you're listening to this, I know you're diehard. If you're listening to this, I'll wrap it up right now. But please, for you, rare select people who've been listening for 11 minutes now, comment, DM me, communicate with me, join the Facebook group, and let's have and in fact, I think I'll start taking submissions. I'll start taking submissions from you in terms of what about my words or message, what it makes you think of, what it brings up in your own experience. Because I know every day people in the hospital say, "Oh, thank you for the videos. You stopped doing them for a while. What happened?" Um, it made me think of this, and I wanted to ask you about my family. Or so it's a very cool experience for me. Anytime I know that this format, this account is reaching one person, but it would help me a lot to hear from you which topics are the most useful, which formats are the most inviting and irresistible, so that I can focus on those and really keep this going and build it to what it actually deserves to be. All right. Thank you for listening for 12 minutes on Instagram, and it's quite an accomplishment. I'll also post this to YouTube. So thank you for everything. Talk soon.